Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today I'll be talking about the back seven of this defensive prospect rankings that I haven't done quite yet. The linebackers, the safeties, the corners, kind of group them all together because one, the linebackers class is kind of small. It's not as good as I was kind of hoping for, but I think there are still some gems there. And also the safety class, I think there's a lot of good safeties in there, but I could only really limit it down to five, especially the ones that I think are going to go in the top 3 rounds. And the quarterback room, there's going to be 10 of them. So all total, there's going to be about, I think there's about 21 prospects that we're talking about today. Not as much as the 25 that I talked about the defensive line class, so hopefully not as long as a video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get on, and I'll start off with the cornerback room. Now, the cornerback draft class, I think there are really good players that are going to be in the 4th round as well. So I'll give out 2 shout-outs because unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do my sleeper video like I would want to. That's going to be Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech and Noah Williams. Both Noah Williams from Cal. Both those guys, look out for, especially day 3. They have a chance to sneak you back into day 2, like that late 3rd round. But both of them, really great corners, and whoever's going to draft them is going to be really, really happy. But couldn't quite get them into this video, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and start off with my number 10 corner, and that's going to be Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. Now, this is a guy that unfortunately I was not able to watch when I went to the Kentucky-Auburn game. He was not available. He was hurt. I ended up seeing 2 other Kentucky players that I was kind of looking forward to. One that really impressed, another one that really didn't. And if you saw my defensive line ranking, you saw the one that definitely did not impress me. But so I had it when I was really looking at other Kentucky games, especially like watching some other SEC games that he was in. I was very thoroughly impressed with Maxwell Hairston, and especially his South Carolina game. That was one of the games I also watched of Kentucky that he actually played because he also was kind of hurt this year, which is unfortunate. But he's a really, really feisty corner. And like I said, I can understand why a lot of people like him. I have him a little bit further down. I think just his size kind of concerns me. Like I said, he's going to be more so of a number 2 corner. I don't think he can be your automatic guy who's number 1. But if you're looking for a number 2, potentially a guy who I think could potentially play nickel. I probably prefer him to be more outside, but he's a really good corner, really good ball hawking ability. Something like I said in the good games I saw is obviously South Carolina. Also watched the Louisville game. I usually try to watch the Louisville versus Kentucky games. Usually those are pretty good games. Those are really good games from him. And none of the ones that I actually watched were bad games from him. So like I just kind of put that down. There's the bad games. Like there wasn't really any that I watched, unfortunately. So there are some prospects that like the games that I watched, it was just good games. There wasn't any bad games that I watched. So I'm sure he did have some bad ones, but I unfortunately just didn't watch them. But I will say that he has a distinct fit, and I will say that, like I said, I think that he'll pair well with having a number 1 corner already on the roster and him being like a compliment. In the case of the Rams, they don't really have that. Like I said, the Rams desperately need a number 1 corner, and I could see them potentially taking someone a little bit higher. But if he falls there to in the 2nd round to the Rams, well, actually, no, they don't have a 2nd round pick. They have a 3rd round pick. So especially if he falls to the 3rd round, which I don't think he will, then I think the Rams would definitely take him. But the Rams desperately need corners, and I think that he would fit really, really well in their kind of scheme, especially, like I said, very feisty corner. I think he needs to improve some of his run defense. But then again, like I said, he's like 5'11", 185. So, like, there's only so much that someone that small can be able to do. Not trying to take offense to him, but there is some things to his game that I wish could be better. But overall, I really like the guy. Think he'd be really good. And then the Bills and the Broncos. Like I said, Bills and the Broncos already have their number 1 corner, especially if it goes to the Broncos. Like I said, Riley Moss, after his injury, kind of had like a bad he had kind of like a bad spell, but hopefully we'll be able to bounce back. But regardless, if you get Maxwell Hairston there, you get him put behind Riley Moss, especially if Riley Moss goes down again. You have somebody who can replace him, and you already have your shutdown corner. In the case of the Bills, you already have a really good corner, but good Lord, like you got rid of Kyrie Elam for a reason. You desperately need another corner. So if they don't go corner in the 1st round, I can see them going with one of those they have 2 2nd-round picks. So I could go potentially with a corner there. Now moving on to Darien Porter from Iowa State, my number 9 corner. He's a guy who last year, obviously, they had 2 starting corners above him. TJ Tampa, who I really liked, and I'm trying to think of the other guy. I can't think of off the top of my head, but he only is a 1 year starter, and he's 24 years old. Like I said, he's a wide receiver turn corner, so he has some ball abilities, which is like you can see on the tape. And he's a big dude, very athletically fit kind of guy that you're like, I can mold this guy. But like I said, he's 24 and he's still kind of transitioning into the cornerback position. So I think it's going to drop him a little bit, and that's what's going to cause me to be like, I'm optimistic that he can hit, a specific, he can hit pretty high. But right now, just as far as some of the tape, I think he could be like a solid corner, but I don't know as much as how much of his ceiling is going to be, considering the fact of age and also still learning the game. I will say that he has great special teams ability. I mean, if you watch Iowa State's like whole entire season last year was just kind of crazy, but he was really really good, especially like blocking kicks. So if you're looking at someone who can get impact on special teams, Darien Porter is also that kind of guy. Some of his good games, Iowa was a really good game for him, and also UCF was a really good game. Some of the bad, like I said, I didn't really watch in the bad, unfortunately. The Big 12 games are some ones I didn't watch. Unfortunately, one of the teams, or two of the teams that I didn't really get to watch was Kansas and Kansas State as much as I wanted to. But like I said, with the games that I did watch with Darien Porter of Iowa State, he played really, really well. So I came away very impressed. But I could see that, there are still some things that he needs to improve upon. So being a cornerback 2/3 in the league, I think it'd be perfect for him. Like I said, and being molded by a really good defensive minded head coach or defensive backs coach. And that's the reason why I was kind of looking at the Bills. The Bills, like I said, desperately need corner. They're going to be a lot of these fits because they just desperately need corner, and I can see them mold certain people. But Darien Porter's a guy who needs to be molded, and that would be a perfect place for him to go to because, like I said, I really like the Bills' defense, and especially they need help in the cornerback room. So you get him in there. He's not going to be the number one guy, and he can learn behind a very very good veteran team. Panthers have been looking at him as well. We have number one, and I do like Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson is our number two, but I could see us try to get like more depth because like our cornerback depth is absolutely horrendous. So you get him in the second round maybe, and you're able to have him develop behind Mike Jackson. I think it's perfectly fine because guess what? In case Mike Jackson gets hurt, in case J.C. Horn gets hurt, then you'd have him, and it wouldn't be pressured to be the number one guy initially. Just be able to be a depth piece and then learn as he goes and gets better. Another one potentially is the Falcons. Like I said, you already have A.J. Terrell, but besides A.J. Terrell, you need another guy. And I think that they're going to be looking in the draft, especially the first 3 rounds, for another cornerback. They didn't really get one last year. Obviously, they did their whole fiasco in the first round. But the Falcons don't have that many picks. I think, obviously, they don't have a third and a fifth. So the first 2 picks are going to be very, very crucial as far as like improving their defense to get it to a level where the Falcons are able to compete for the division. I think it's going to be edge rusher and it's going to be cornerback. I wouldn't be surprised if like a strong safety somehow falls to them. They really, really like. But Darien Porter would be a great fit for them. Now moving on to number 8, it's going to be Trey Amos. Trey Amos from Ole Miss transferred from Louisiana into Ole Miss, and he did a really good job. Like I said, I think that he's solid. Obviously, with older prospects, I'm gonna be a little bit hesitant on just because I don't know how much they can grow. At the same exact time, that once they're 24, you drafted them. Okay, well now for the next 4 years, you pretty much have their whole entire prime. So if they can be good, then I think that's perfectly fine. But I think that a lot of people are putting him way too high. I just think he's going to be a very solid corner. Don't think a superstar. Don't think a star. Just think okay, very solid corner. So what am I looking for a solid corner? Well, in the case of the Cardinals, they need help at cornerback. They need a big, long, strong corner, and he could potentially be that kind of person they're looking for. That I'm like, okay, kind of like that for them. I can also see the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, like I said, you already have Jamel Dean. You got McCollum, who's been more of a slot kind of guy, a nickel kind of guy. So if you're able to have him on the outside, Trey Amos, I think it's a pretty decent cornerback room. Obviously, I think you need more help, but I'm very interested to see what the Buccaneers are going to do in this draft class because they have a lot of problems as far as depth on their defense. So which areas they're going to be trying to find a star and which one they're going to be trying to find depth is going to be interesting to see as a Panthers fan, hoping they don't do as well. And then the last one I could potentially see is Trey Amos is also the Bills. Like I said, the Bills are going to be on a lot of these lists because they desperately need corner, and I can see them fit into different roles. Because outside of Benford, I'm not super duper high on the other corners they have on the roster. So that's the reason why, even though these three corners are very different, I think they could all fit technically in the Bills scheme in different areas. But Trey Amos, I think he's going to be a solid corner. And honestly, if you get that in the second round, I think you're perfectly fine with that, especially if he starts falling near the back half of the second round, maybe early third. Like I said, I think you'd be fine with getting Trey Amos. Moving on after tier 3. So those are tier 3. Now moving on to tier 2. We have Azareye'h Thomas from FSU. I really like him, but I really like some of the other corners ahead of him. But dude, like, I was able to watch some FSU games this year because of the fact that, especially early on in the season, they were losing and they lost a lot this year. But he played sparingly last year as well, and I watched a lot of Florida State games last year because I was very interested in Jared Verse. I was very interested in Brady Fisk, and both of them worked out. And I already talked about defensive line class, about Joshua Farmer. I really like him as well. And one of the people that like I saw a little bit of, because like I said, he didn't really start, but he came in every now and then because you had Renardo Green there. But Azareye'h Thomas was really, really feisty, and I really like what I saw. But this year as well, he had a really good year, even though, like I said, overall Florida State didn't have the best. But I'm really excited for him, especially what he can do. I think he can be a number 1. I think right now it's probably better to be a number 2. But I think if he's thrown to the fire, I think that there's a possibility that he could actually do well as a cornerback 1. So that's the reason why, I think potentially if he goes to the Packers and he's able to, don't really think that Jair Alexander is going to be on the roster next year. If that's the case, you desperately need help at corner. And I think Azareye'h Thomas is going to fall in a situation where, if the Packers end up taking a different position in the first round pick, in the second round, if he starts to fall, I could see them try to trade up to get that guy because I think Azareye'h Thomas, like I said, could be a number 1. I feel like he has the makeup to be a really good corner, especially if he goes to the Packers that has a really good defense coordinator, and hopefully they get better pass rush, so obviously he doesn't have to be, on an island for 5 seconds. Next one's going to be the Ravens. The Ravens invested a lot last year, TJ Tampa and also Nate Wiggins. But I think they're going to invest even more in the cornerback room, especially probably in the second, third round, because one, Marlon Humphrey's getting up there in age. Yes, he just came off of All-Pro season, 30 years old as well. And also there was certain times where Stevens was starting, so hopefully TJ Tampa takes that position. But if I remember correctly, watching a lot of Ravens games and hearing from a lot of Ravens fans, they did not like Stevens. Brandon Stevens, no. So trying to find someone who can fit that role instead of him, I think it's going to be Azareye'h Thomas. Like I said, I really like him. Maybe they think that TJ Tampa can be the guy. For some reason, he slipped to the 4th round. But if not, you invest more in the cornerback room, and you have a very good depth that you don't have to worry about some of the injuries that often come with being a Raven for some odd reason. Now, also going with the Commanders too. The Commanders need a lot of help on their defense. I love Mike Sanders still. I prefer him to be more of a nickel, but he can still play someone outside. But if he's more so your nickel, you got Marshawn Lattimore. You need another guy, and Azareye'h Thomas being the number 2, I really like that. I think you have Marshawn Lattimore go against the bigger body, like you're back-to-back going against A.J. Brown or whatnot. And you have Azareye'h Thomas, who's still a really good corner, really more of a slender, like I said, I think he's 6'2", 197, if I remember. Like I said, a little bit slenderer, but like I said, really, really feisty. I would like that for him as far as he's not the number 1 corner, but he can be in that transitional phase to be the number 1 corner, especially when Marshawn Lattimore does take another step back. Right now, he's on the teetering of can he still be as good as he once was? But as of right now, I think he can still be good enough to be the number 1 corner. So Azareye'h Thomas, really like him for Florida State. Now moving on to Tier 1. Yes, I have 5 Tier 1 corners because the top 3 I feel pretty confident in. 4 and 5 are really close, and I couldn't decide exactly which one I like better. So I'm going to list number 5 first, obviously kind of talk about, and then number 4. But both of these are coming off injuries. Both of them were highly touted last year, and I liked them coming out last year. And then this year, unfortunately, like I said, injuries kind of caused a lot of situations. That's really a lot for these corners, except for two of them, like in the top five, in my top five. They're all coming off injuries, so it's kind of hard to really grade them as far as like, well, how are they going to be in the first year? So let's talk about number five. Number five, I have Shavon Revel from East Carolina. Like I said, he was phenomenal last year. However, he tore his ACL, and that's going to be a little concerning. I know that, a lot of people say, oh, well, the ACL is not as bad as it once was. True, but it's still bad regardless. Like I said, it's still like having a recovery, hoping you can get back to where you were from before. I think he can, and I think that you take the guy who has the traits in Shavon Revel, and like I said, really long corner, really, like I said, I think obviously he's better than Azareye'h Thomas, but very, very feisty and has great instincts as well. Like I said, he had a really good games against Appalachia State. The bad games, I didn't really watch any of the bad games because it was mainly injury related. He was gone for most of the season, so there wasn't really any bad games to really watch. But I will say this: I think that you're taking a risk by taking him, but I think that in that back half of that first round, or maybe even at the very top of the second round, that's where he's going to land. So Shavon Revel, like I said, the Vikings would love this guy. Like I said, potentially at pick 24, or if they feel like he can even trade back and get some more capital because they have nothing. They have 4 picks. They can still get them. I would love that for the Vikings because right now your cornerback room is okay. You got Isaiah Rodgers, you got you re-signed the guy. I'm trying to think of his name off the top of my head. Can't think of it. Washington corner. For some reason, can't think of his name. But if you get that number 2, like you have Shavon Revel be, I think that's a pretty good cornerback room. You've invested a lot in your defense. You obviously need more safety help, so that could be another position. But I'll talk about the safeties soon. This is a pretty decent safety class, especially for if you have the right defense, if you have enough pressure, and make their jobs a lot easier. So I would love for Shavon Revel to stay there, stay in purple, like I said, and he would work out really well for the Vikings. Another team I could possibly see is the Bills. Like I said, Bills already desperately need help at corner. And in this situation, like I said, being a bigger corner compared to what they have with Christian Benford, I think that'd be a good pairing, especially against some of the bigger wide receivers that the Bills are going to face. You get to have a really good matchup with Revel. And then also the Saints. The Saints really need corner help. And honestly, I'll talk about another player that I would hate for them to go to them, but I could potentially see it. It's just I don't know how Brandon Staley's going to do with his defense because that was LA, that was both the Rams and the Chargers. This is going to be the Saints, and the Saints were not that defense from before. So how is he going to transition into his 3-4 from what they were from before? I don't know yet, since the Saints are kind of in this weird transition period. But like I said, if they like Shavon Revel, I would hate for them to take him in the second round. But that's as far as I could possibly see Revel fall. I don't think he's going to fall that far because I think that people are going to be okay with the ACL injury and him coming back, especially if the medical clears. Now moving on to number 4, and that's going to be Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. I loved him coming out last year. Unfortunately for this year, he has another hip surgery. It's 2 hip surgeries, and that's where I'm a little bit concerned. Honestly, if his medicals check out, he should be at bare minimum, probably top 15 pick. Legitimately, he's a sticky corner. That's all I can tell you. In man, you don't get by him. He's really physical, and I really like that from him. And I think that in that kind of scheme, he work out perfectly. Like I said, I think the sky's the limit for him. But having back-to-back hip surgeries, I'm very, very concerned about how that's going to hold up in the NFL because, obviously as a corner, you desperately need your hips. That's kind of par for the course. But as it is right now, I really like him. I think he has a ton of potential. So in that case, I don't think he'll go as high as 19 because I don't know how much people are checking on his medicals. But if certain edge rushers are not there for the Buccaneers, that would be a perfect fit for them. And I would hate it. I would legitimately hate it if the Bucs take Benjamin Morrison. I would hate a lot of players if the Bucs or the Falcons take him, but that's regardless. Benjamin Morrison, really, really great player, would fit really well with the Buccaneers, and also you have that process of getting once Jamel Dean gets a little bit older, then he can be your number one. In this case, he can be your number two. Jamel Dean can be your number one. And like I said, you already have McCollum moving inside to nickel. I think that'll be perfect for the Buccaneers. I hate to see it, but could potentially happen. And then also the Packers will be another good one. Like so the Packers desperately need corner because losing Jair Alexander. Yada yada. I've already talked about it before, but you need a shutdown corner, especially in the NFC North. Benjamin Morrison could definitely be that. It's especially really good in man. And then the last one that I could possibly see him going to is the Raiders. Now the Raiders, obviously, their cornerback room is absolutely abhorrent. It is downright terrible. And normally, a lot of people have been talking about like the Raiders would take National Gentry the first round. We don't know that now because there's a possibility that he could go to the Jaguars. But if the Raiders go in a different position in the first round, they desperately need to make sure they get that cornerback room. And Benjamin Morrison, Shavon Revel, so the same as that kind of way, or potential instances of good corners that are going to start to fall because of the fact of their injuries. And the Raiders are in the position to trade back up and get him, or hopefully he falls down to them at pick 37 or something like that. So Raiders would love him to go there too because I think that he would really, really fit well with Graham's defensive scheme and also what Pete Carroll's going to want to do on defense as well. So Benjamin Morrison, love him. And then number 3 is Jahdae Barron. Both him and number 2 are really close. It just depends on what you're looking for. But man, if I'm looking for a zone corner who can also play really, really well in nickel, legitimately, he could start nickel and be an amazing nickel. But outside, I think he'd still be good, just a little bit smaller. Jahdae Barron from Texas is absolutely amazing. Really sound tackler and also has really, really good ball skills. You're able to see that too in the at Texas. Goodness gracious, I was losing my train of thought. But I really, really like him. I think that he's going to be, if anything, he's going to be at bare minimum a very solid starter. But I think he could be a superstar, potentially just being a star, depending on where he goes. And this is what I was talking about before with the Saints. I would love him to go to the Saints. Actually, as a fan of the game, I like him to go to the Saints. As a Panthers fan, no, because Lawrence Taylor is more of a nickel. I don't feel comfortable him playing outside. He's going to be gone next year, and outside of him, your cornerback room is absolutely decimated. So you desperately need to go to cornerback. So because you got Kool-Aid McKinstry, love him, but if you get Kool-Aid McKinstry and you get Jahdae Barron, I think that's a really good cornerback room that I wouldn't hate going against every single year for the next however many years both of them can play. And like I said, it would be a great pick. I don't know if you'll go in that direction, but that would be a great pickup for you if you do take him at 9. So I do think he's going to go a little bit higher. Packers another way. Like I said, Packers desperately need a number 1 corner. Jahdae Barron can be that. Can be able to move around, especially like I said, can play outside, can play inside. So I love his versatility. And because there are certain, I don't know the best way to put it, but there's certain viewpoint about nickels that some people are a little bit lower on. I'm super duper high on. Cooper DeJean was my number 2 corner last year, and I said he could play inside and outside too. And it worked out perfectly for the Eagles, who took literally my first 2 corners. I had Quinyon Mitchell as number 1 too, which is still baffling to me that the league let that happen. But anyways, back to Jahdae Barron. Would love him to go to the Packers as well. Kind of talked about that before. And then the Bills, like I said, the Bills need help. Is he going to last to the Bills? I hope not. But if he does and the Bills take him, that would be amazing for them. That would be absolute, literally, if he starts falling and the Bills don't try to trade up and get him, what are you doing? He would perfectly fit your scheme. He would perfectly fit, in case Christian Benford has another concussion, God forbid, he would perfectly fit being that number 1, playing that same exact role. And if not, then you have 2 really good corners that can play both inside and outside and move around, and you can disguise certain things. And like I said, be so good for Sean McDermott's defense. Number 2, like I said, very close to number 3 with Jahdae Barron. Number 2 is going to be Will Johnson from Michigan. I was a lot higher on him earlier in the season. Then he got hurt, which is kind of going to bring him down just a little bit because obviously when a player comes off injury, it's one of those kind of things where you're like, okay, we're hoping that he can get back to where he was from before. But the same exact time, it's not. There's nothing like set in stone that's going to be like he's definitely going to be the same as that guy. So obviously he's gonna be knocked down a little bit, but I really like Will Johnson. Liked him last year too when I was watching because obviously I was watching Mason Graham, was watching Kenneth Grant last year when they ended up winning the national championship. Um, Watched a lot of Josiah Stewart, which I talked about that in the edge rushing class. Love me some Josiah Stewart, but I like Will Johnson and the fact that he is a very, very physical corner who, to me, kind of reminds me of AJ Terrell, and that's kind of like I put him potentially going. Oh no, I think he could potentially go to the Falcons, but that would fall way too far for me. Like if he fell to 15, it would be crazy for the Falcons not to take him because he's that good. But I think he's going to be a star cornerback in the league. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I think he's going to be a star cornerback in the league. Really, really, really good. And I think that he would perfectly fit, like I said, the Raiders potentially at number 6. Like I said, people say that very high, but you have the connection of both Spytek and Tom Brady to Michigan. Of all people, they would know for a fact if he's going to be healthy or not because they would be able to get in contact with the Michigan trainers. They also probably have seen him multiple times being from Michigan as well. And they desperately need help at cornerback, especially if Genty's gone. Why not take Will Johnson? Another one, too, that he could potentially fit in is the 49ers. Like I said, the 49ers desperately need help. They had just lost Javarius Ward. Their cornerback room and their defensive tackle room is absolutely abhorrent. So if we're looking like that, I'll take this back. Bernardo Green, love him. But outside of that, I don't really feel super duper confident in their cornerback room. But if they are able to get Will Johnson, I think that's going to fit really well for their corners. But I know that the 49ers usually just kind of like, okay, we can push off in the corners. We can take them like in that second, third round and be perfectly fine. So I do feel in the first round they're probably going to go with a defensive lineman, but still an option. And then lastly are the Dolphins. They're going to be losing. They're going to lose Jalen Ramsey because he's going to be traded, and they need another shutdown corner. Now, obviously, I think that it'd be better if they got Jahdae Barron because I think that he fits more of what Jalen Ramsey did for them, especially because he has inside-out versatility. Will Johnson doesn't have that, but I really like Will Johnson. I think he'd be a shutdown corner, and in a division where we don't know what's going to happen with the Patriots. We don't know what's going to be happening, like as far as like if the Bills continue to be as good as they are, because like let's just say that Keon Coleman breaks through is in his second year. You definitely need a shutdown corner because you already have to deal with Shakir and all the other weapons that he has. And also with the Dolphins, we don't know what's going to happen with Tyreek, but you still have Jalen Waddle. So you still need to find somebody that's going to be able to actually, play well against Jalen Waddle, even though I think that Will Johnson's speed is not going to match up well with Jalen Waddle. But, no, you're Dolphins. What am I talking about? The Jets, though, you still have to have Garrett Wilson. Goodness gracious, I went off on a tangent. But you need somebody who's going to be able to shut him down. I think Will Johnson can be that. So if he falls to the Dolphins, I could see them taking him. But I think they would probably prefer to have Jahdae Barron, but they still need help in that cornerback room. Also need help with the offensive line. But they usually don't do what I want them to do. But number one, and I didn't talk about him in the wide receiver ranking because I knew I could talk about him in the cornerback ranking, and that is Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is my number one player in this draft class. One, because not only is he good at wide receiver, he's also good at cornerback. And he excels at both positions. Like legitimately, he is my number one wide receiver, but I put him at corner because I want to preface, I think in the NFL, he should be a starter at corner and then in certain packages be like a wide receiver. Like I said, I think that he has great ball skills, like legit one of the best like hand-eye coordination that I've seen in a very long time. Really great ball skills. His routes needs improving, and I think that sometimes like he can get a little bit bullied in coverage, but for the most part, I think that he cares about. Obviously, he cares about football, and I'm not gonna say that about everybody, but obviously he cares. You can tell by his demeanor, and you can tell by the fact that, like, legitimately, he has some of the best stamina that you've ever seen in your whole entire life because he was able to play both positions at a very, very high level. So if he's able to get a little bit bigger, if he's able to, learn more about both schemes, and I think he's smart enough to be able to handle it because he showed in college he was able to play both positions as well. But this way, he's not going to have any classes. He's not going to have anything like that. It's going to be straight football for the next however many months before the game, you have OTAs, and then you have the games. I think there's potentially where he can start at corner, be a very good corner, and then also have certain packages where, in this case, where he's more likely going to be taken by the Browns. You already have Jerry Jeudy. I think Cedric Tillman going to his third year is going to work out for them, and then he could be your third wide receiver. I think that's perfectly fine for him because he doesn't have to be on the field at all times. He can get a breather. And on corner, you if you looked a little bit, you kind of see that Greg Newsome might be on the way out. He's in his last year of his contract. Emerson hasn't been what they were hoping for, so they still need a number 2 corner. And in this case, Travis Hunter would be perfect for that, paired up with Denzel Ward. So I've already said that mainly as the main fit. The other one are the top 3. Like there's no way he's getting out of the top 3. Obviously, the Titans are going to go Cam Ward, but if somehow Travis Hunter falls 3, he's going to be taken by the Giants too, because the Giants also need his help because their cornerback number 2 right now is Deonte Banks, who's absolutely garbage, and I like Paulson Debo. So you have number 2 corner, and then your wide receiver outside of Malik Neighbors is Darius Slayton, who's fine, and then you got a guy from Kentucky, can't think of his name off the top of my head. He's okay, but like I think that'd be perfectly fine if he goes to the Giants as well, but he's not. He's going to go to the Bears, or the Browns. So I think like legitimately, Travis Hunter is going to be a star, going to be a superstar in this league. Hopefully, he's able to hold up. That's the main concern that I'm going to have. But so far, he hasn't given me any inclination that he can't. Outside of the Colorado State game where he actually got missiled, so it's not really his fault. But anyways, so that's the cornerback room. Kind of blew through those. I know like it's going to take me a little bit to get through these linebackers and safeties because I have to explain a lot about some of them because I have them ranked high, but there's still a lot of concerns about them. So, got done with the corners. Now let's move on to the linebackers. The linebackers, I'll have top 5. There are some people that I kind of like later on, like a Jay Higgins or whatnot. They're not going to be in my top 5, though. But starting off number 5 is a player who is older than me, which is still surprising that a player is going to be drafted that's going to be older than me. I also have Tyler Shug, but still. And that's Demetrius Knight from South Carolina. I think he has a lot of potential. Obviously, he is really good run fitter. I think he has really good speed. However, being as old as he is, I think he's going to fall down on the draft board because people are going to look at and be like, I could probably get this guy a little bit later. Because linebacker, 1, is not a very valuable position. And 2, like I said, if you take him, you're taking his prime in his rookie contract. I don't know if he gets a second contract unless he absolutely balls out. His second contract might just be a 1-year deal because he's 25 right now. And he makes it to the end of his rookie deal. He's 29. So he's like 1 year away from hitting that definitely decline for what usually happens for linebackers. So I think that that might cause a lot of teams to be like, well, we can wait on him, and then we have his prime for a rookie contract for like a 3rd-round pick. But like I said, I still think he's a good corner. I still think he's a good linebacker. Just in run fits, though, he's not the best in coverage. But if you want somebody who's going to be able to be a thumper, who's going to be able to, be a good in pursuit, that's Demetrius Knight. Like I said, really good fits could potentially be the Colts. Like I said, Colts desperately need linebacker help. They come up here on a couple times. I think obviously the Panthers have been looking at him too. I wouldn't be happy if we got him because I think that if we're going to go linebacker, we'll go with some of these other players. But I would be fine with it. And then the last one I think I put is the Cowboys because the Cowboys just absolutely need a linebacker help in general. They kind of just patched work it kind of right now. Like I said, they have Overshown who's out for pretty much the whole entire year. Then they brought in they traded for Kenneth Murray, and then they got another linebacker as well. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but still it's just more of patchwork. And then they got the guy from Notre Dame they drafted last year who was solid, but like not anything special. So your linebacker room is not looking too good, not looking too hot. So I think that the more likely the Cowboys will go linebacker. I don't know how early, but if they get Demetrius Knight, I think they'll be good for him because one, he'll have a good defensive line in front of him because I think that hopefully Mozzie Smith can take the next step. I like Osa Odigizua, and then I also like Micah Parsons. So hopefully that'll be a good fit for him. Now moving on to number 4 for the linebackers in tier 3, and that's going to be Chris Paul Jr. from Ole Miss. Came from Arkansas, went to Ole Miss. He's just a really solid linebacker. Like legitimately, I think he could be the green dot. He can be the guy who's going to call out plays. Um, I really liked his interview. If you watch the interview with him, the Bootleg Football podcast, Brett Coleman, EJ Snyder, like I said, I love both of them. Got to know Chris Paul a little bit more because I was watching a little bit because I remember when he was in Arkansas, and then now Ole Miss. Like I said, I watched some Ole Miss games, and I think he's like he got better as far as like taking blocks. And I think that like he has the smarts to be able to be that leader. So if you're looking at someone who can either take over the mantle eventually and be that green dot, or if you're looking just for another solid option at linebacker, that's Chris Paul Jr. Like I said, his fits for me are going to be I read this too small. Goodness gracious. The 49ers to replace the 49ers to replace Dre Greenlaw because they desperately need somebody who can replace him. I think that's fair. Obviously not as good as Dre Greenlaw, but still at the same time being a really good player. I said the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are going to be a team that's going to be in desperate need of a linebacker because one, Levante David's getting up there in age. Two, they lost KJ Britt, which depending on who you feel about it. As a Bucs fan, you either like him or you don't. But you desperately need someone who's going to be one, learn from him, learn from Levante David while he still is able to play at a pretty good level, and two, just be a starter because you desperately need somebody. So I could potentially see Chris Paul Jr. landing there and just eventually being taking over for a Levante David. The last one I said is the Colts. No. I said the Cardinals. Actually, no. The Cardinals need help at the linebacker position because right now it's not bad, but it could be better. And I think that obviously it's not a huge need in Gannon's system, but it's one of those things that's underrated. So if Chris Paul Jr. starts to fall in the third round, I could see the Cardinals potentially picking up and be like, okay, we can hand you the keys in like about a year. You learn our scheme. You improve upon your game. And like I said, a really good run stuffer, has a really great football IQ, and does decent enough in coverage. Like I said, he's not like a coverage linebacker, but I think he's decent enough. So that's number 4. Number 3 is going to be Carson Schwesinger. I think I said that right, from UCLA. Very, very solid option. I did not realize how good he was until obviously the combine happened and he kind of blew up people out of the water. So I was like, okay, let me actually watch this kid because obviously I was not watching a lot of UCLA. I hate to do this to Foster, but like even he's like, who we are in UCLA, and then his press conference was absolutely abhorrent. But anyways, I didn't watch much of UCLA, so I was like, okay, let's actually watch him. And I was like, hold up a second. Say that was actually pretty good. And then while I was watching Ursery, that's where I ended up watching Schwesinger as well. Like I said, really solid option. I think that he's got pursuit. Obviously, he's got speed. So that's a trait that you absolutely love. I think he's great size as well. And like I said, I think that he has the mentality because I think if I remember correctly, he was a former walk-on, and then he's gotten better ever since. Like I said, he has a mentality of being a walk-on. Which, if you know anything about being a walk-on, you have to go through all these different. I don't know, depending on the program, but you have to go through like all these different workouts. You're basically trying to earn your way onto the team, and so I like that mentality in a player that's like shown that he has risen above his star rating in high school. Everything's been counting him out, and then actually rising up and above, and probably going to be a second round pick because a lot of people are liking him. I like that in the guy. I think there's possibility he can go in the second round, and there's potential places that can potentially take him. One is going to be the Cowboys. Like I said, the Cowboys desperately need somebody. They're looking for someone who's going to fit that Van Der Esch role. I think he fits Van Der Esch's role, like legitimately. I think that one, he has the speed. I think he has the power. I think he can get better as far as like recognizing stuff. But like that comes in time. It comes especially like learning the scheme. And linebacker's going to take him a little bit longer to get in. Well, to really transition into the NFL. But I think that potentially at the Cowboys, that'll be a good role for him as far as going into that situation where like he has a lot of stars around him. He doesn't need the guy. And I really, like I said, I think he's going to be, like I said, with Chris Paul Jr., I think he's going to be really solid. And I would hate for him to potentially go to the Saints because I could honestly see the Saints taking him and him being like a Pete Warner, which is going to be I would absolutely hate that. And you can also see Carson Schwesinger. He also has some like not only has a pursuit, but he also can get after the quarterback too. So if you want a QB spy, he could potentially be that. And just like what I was saying for the Saints, being a Pete Warner kind of guy. In the case of the Ravens, he can be what they were hoping that Trenton Simpson could be, which maybe they still feel confident he can be. But like if you put Carson Schwesinger there next to Roquan Smith, that is a dangerous combination. Like I said, if I'm the Ravens, I would love that for him because, like I said, he can be more of a blitzing linebacker. And like I said, he's beside one of the best linebackers in the game right now. So I would love that for Carson Schwesinger if he can make it to the Ravens and the second round. So that's into tier 3. So moving on to number 2, and that's going to be Jihaad Campbell in tier 2. I think a lot of people are overhyping him because I think generally a lot of people are overhyping a lot of these prospects because there's not really a lot of blue chippers. They're hoping they can find blue chippers. And Jihaad Campbell is an athletic freak. Absolutely. But he's very inexperienced. And if I think that people are going to try to put him like, oh, he can be like a really good linebacker, I think he's more of a tweener, just like Jalon Walker is, who is going to be number 1. So I'll talk about him. But if I am hoping for Jihaad Campbell to make it in the NFL, it's going to be more so of a blitzing linebacker that's more than likely going to be playing as an edge rusher. But if you're in an edge rusher system, that could potentially be someone who drops into coverage. I think that's fine for Jihaad Campbell. But I would much rather him be a player that is just like, okay, I have a run fit. I'm going to fit there. I'm not going to just be using my instincts because obviously he's very inexperienced and he just does not know what he's seeing. So unless you do a lot of work with him and make him to a linebacker, he's not that right now. And I think there's a lot of people who are like, oh, we can fix him. We can make it work. It doesn't work like that all the time. So I'm hopeful that he can improve upon his game. But as of right now, he's a very athletic freak that in the right system could really work for him. And I think some of those positions, like I said, could be the Colts. Obviously need help on the edge, but they also do a really good job of coaching up linebackers. So if they want him to be a linebacker, I think that would be good for him because they've shown in the past that they could do so. Because guess what? Now they got Lou Anarumo. And Lou Anarumo had a really good linebacker play, and some of that was from his own teaching of what it seemed to be like with Jermaine Pratt, with Logan Wilson. So you take athletic freak, is potentially, especially if Tyler Warren's not there, and in that case, you're able to actually have him, learn and be a starter and be an impact player on a really, really bad Colts defense. Another person he could potentially go to, goodness gracious, is the Cowboys. I already talked about them before. I wouldn't like that as much because, like I said, I think he shouldn't be more of a linebacker. He should be more of like a tweener. But if they fall in love with him, then they'll take him because that's just Jerry. But I would prefer him not to go to the Cowboys. I would prefer him to go, not as a Panthers fan, but as an NFL fan, to the Buccaneers. Because in this case, Buccaneers like to blitz. Now, obviously, Todd Bowles made the suggestion that they wouldn't blitz as much as they had really good players, which is true. But as it stands, if you're able to get a player like Jihaad Campbell, who's able to play the position that KJ Britt does, well, KJ Britt did, learn from Levante David as well. So he doesn't have to be the green dye. He doesn't have to be, like anything else besides, okay, I'll be a blitzing linebacker, be a run fit linebacker, and learn the position of linebacker with one of the best in Levante David. Like, that would be the perfect fit for him. Him going there, him going to the Colts would be perfect for him to be an actual linebacker. But outside of that, I think he's going to be more of an edge rusher or like in blitzing situations, like third down, like, like a QB spy-esque kind of thing. I like him, but there are some people who are hyping him way too much, are putting him at like 9 to the Saints, which is wild. Absolutely wild. If that happens, good on you, Saints. You made me happy because you took somebody that I did not care for you to take. And number 1 is going to be on the low tier. I think that a lot of people are putting up with him way too high because they're expecting a lot out of him. I think it'd be better if he gets taken at, pick 24-ish or something like that. That's going to be Jaylen Walker. Jaylen Walker is someone that I've grown to love in a very specific role. I didn't like the tweener attitude that a lot of people were putting at and just be like, oh, he can do so much for you. And I'm like, well, we've seen that happen before, and I was not the biggest fan of Isaiah Simmons, and I'm glad that the Panthers didn't end up taking him, even though it's a different situation as far as like linebacker and safety. In this case of being a linebacker edge rusher, I think that Jaylen Walker can fit in a certain role as far as being an off-ball linebacker that can blitz, and the same as that kind of role that Frankie Louvu had in the Panthers, which is the reason why Jaylen Walker to the Panthers have been so tight, and also because Panthers GMs are notorious for telling everybody what we're doing. Like, legitimately, I have picked the correct first-round pick since Christian McCaffrey. And the last time that I was wrong was freaking David Gettleman, which is a whole other thing, too, because I was so upset we didn't take Chris Jones. We didn't take in Vernon Butler. But that's for another story. But I really, really like Jaylen Walker now as being in that role. And I think that there's other fits he could potentially make, but I just prefer him to be in that role because I think that's the best suited for him, is being someone who's definitely going to be blitzing, especially if he goes to the Panthers, has a very solidified defensive line now because we heavily invested into it. So him being able to shoot gaps, him being able to use his speed, potentially being the QB spy as well, because like I said, that speed and that pursuit is otherworldly. I will say this. I put down a good game for Texas because a lot of people point that out, and I do think it is an overall good game from him. However, I will put a little caveat. 2 of his sacks should not have been sacks. What I mean by that is Kelvin Banks did not get beat by Jaylen Walker. Quinn Ewers got beat by Jaylen Walker because on one of them, basically, Kelvin Banks washes Jaylen Walker out because obviously Kelvin Banks is a really good tackle. Talked about that before. I think he's going to be more of a guard. But anyways, but he wins against Jaylen Walker. I was a former tackle. Like I said, keep him outside. And the quarterback is supposed to step up. But what does Quinn Ewers do? He doesn't step up. Even though the pocket is clearly there for him to step up and make a throw, he doesn't. So instead, he gets sacked by Jaylen Walker. And then the second time Kelvin Banks is doing his job, there's a slight opening, and then Quinn Ewers, for some odd reason, decides to run the ball when he doesn't have to because the pocket is so clean. And then he basically just runs into Jaylen Walker, who disengages and then tackles him for a sack. So it's not so much a win. It's more of Jaylen Walker being in the right place at the right time kind of ordeal, and Quinn Ewers just having the worst pocket awareness. So I want to make the caveat. I still think the overall is a good game, but not an amazing game that a lot of people point to. Because if you actually watch the tape, or if you know anything about being an offensive lineman, that's not his fault. That's not Kelvin Banks' fault. Anyways, just want to make the caveat. But I do like Jaylen Walker. Like I said, I think in the Panthers situation, to be a great fit. I think there's been some talk for the Raiders, and that one I don't really understand. But I've said it's a fit. The main reason why I put people at fits is because the team has shown interest in them, and I'm trying to see if I can find a fit for them. So in this case, if you truly think that he could potentially be like a replacement for maybe Robert Spillane, I don't think that should be the case, but maybe because you have your edge rusher, you have Crosby, heck, you got Malcolm Kuntz. So unless you want another rotation, then just maybe not, we'll have Malcolm Kuntz be healthy. But would you take that at 6? No. But I still could potentially see them taking him because it's just the Raiders, even though it's a new regime. So hopefully they make the sensible decision. But that'll be wild if he goes to number 6. And the last one too, I think I put it down. Can't read my own handwriting. Goodness gracious. Who did I put down? Goodness gracious, I can't even read who I put down. Like I said, this is what I have to write, have to read. So I just cannot even see who I wrote down, which is terrible. I legitimately cannot see what I wrote. Oh, that was they all put together. It looked like an R, but it was a Panther. And the Patriots, but the Patriots aren't going to take them. So that was a waste of time. Sorry about that. If the Patriots don't take a lineman with their first pick, or for some odd reason they don't take any other position, because Jaylen Walker should not go at 8. Definitely shouldn't go at 4. Like I said, I think he should go in the 20s, but he's not going to because a lot of people are hyping him up a lot. And he'll go to the Panthers, and I'll be fine with it. I would prefer Donovan Ezeraku. I'm going a little bit of a tangent now, so I'll try to get back on track. But I think Jaylen Walker will be a good player, a solid player, but I don't think any of these linebackers are going to be absolute stars. So just want to make the caveat, not a very great linebacker, but I think there are some good options who could be still playing, like, say, 8 years down the line. Now, going into the safety, the last position that I'm going to do, I don't do special teams, don't do kickers or punters. The last position I want to do, I have 6 guys. Starting off with Tier 3, number 6 is going to be the first of the Penn State safeties. That's going to be Jaylen Reed. I think that these Tier 3 are just solid options. I don't think they're amazing, but I think they're solid enough options because they have really good traits. The 2 Penn State safeties, I'll talk about Jaylen Reed first before moving on to Kevin Winston Jr., I think are really athletically gifted. Obviously, Penn State has a lot of those. And I think that in a situation where they're focusing on playing in the box, playing downhill, like I said, I think they're really good tacklers. I don't think Jaylen Reed's the best in coverage. And that's a very big concern for a safety. And so if you're hoping for just more of someone who's going to play in the box, who's going to help on the run, then I think Jaylen Reed can work in that situation. But more often than not, I think he's better suited being a backup who could potentially get a little bit better to eventually take over to be the number 1 guy. Jets kind of come to mind as far as needing a safety, more safety in that room. I think it's okay as is, but it definitely needs some more help. So getting some more youth in there, him eventually being taken over a position, I think that works fine with the Jets. The Raiders also desperately need help as far as safety because they lost Morrig. I think they go in a different direction because I think there's better safeties for them in that situation as far as being a starter, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But Jaylen Reed, I don't want to seem like he's bad, but I just think that he has a very specific role. But if the Raiders take him, I'm not going to be upset. I think it can still work out. And the last one is the Lions. Now, it might be kind of surprising why I say the Lions. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I love what the Lions have been doing for a very, very long time. But right now, they got Kirby Joseph, who's amazing, and they got Brian Branch, who's amazing. But they use Brian Branch in both the safety / nickel roles. So whenever he plays the nickel, you leave up that safety position. In this case, you could have Jaylen Reed be in that situation where you have an absolute ball hawk as safety with Kirby Joseph, paired with him, who's a really good downhill tackler, and then you have Brian Branch being in the nickel. I think that would be amazing, absolutely amazing for the Lions because you get someone who you could probably get in the 3rd round, so you get to focus on other positions in the first 2 rounds, and you get a starter in certain packages. So in my opinion, that would be the best fit for Jaylen Reed. Does it happen? I don't know, but I would love that for him. Now moving on to number 5 is a guy who sky's the limit on potential, but he has one of the most major flaws that is going to cause him to fall on draft night, and that is going to be Andrew Mukuba from Texas. Transferred in from Clemson to Texas, makes it all the way to the semifinals of the college football playoff with Texas. But, man, if you're talking about a free safety, a ball hawk free safety, that is definitely him. Like I said, Andrew Mukuba, I think he had 5 picks. Some of it was kind of toss-ups, I will say that, especially that Georgia game. Carson Beck is just really that Georgia-Tennessee game was just wild in general, but still. It's one of his good games, but some of that was just Carson Beck just being dumb. But Andrew Mukuba, if you're looking for a ball hawk free safety, then he can be your guy. However, he is not very good at tackling. Legitimately, some of it has to do with his size, but some of it is just really, really bad technique. So, if you're taking more of a big, high, not big, I like big, You're taking a high free safety, someone who's just going to basically play like a robber role, who is just going to be like, a almost like an outfielder, just like whatever. If the ball is in the air, it's mine. Then he work perfectly fine for that role. But if you're looking for an enforcer kind of role, no. Unless he gets a lot better at tackling, which maybe good coaching can help that. He's not that player, not that guy. But he has a role. For instance, if he wants to go to the Bills, like I said, be more of a free safety, get some more ball hucking ability in that secondary that still needs a lot of help. You got Cole Bishop, you got DeMar Hamlin, you got Taylor Rapp with Angel Mukuba. He can be more so of a, like I said, more of a free safety, and you have all three of those other guys are pretty good tacklers in their own right. So I think that would work out well for him because, like I said, they can kind of pick up some of the slack, and he can just make sure that nothing goes over their head. The Bears also desperately need a lot of good safety play, but there's another safety that I like a lot better for the Bears. But this is another potential of just like, okay, in the third round they have 3 picks in the first 2 rounds. If he's somehow there at the third round, you take Angel Mukuba, and I think you're feeling pretty good about that. Like I said, as far as being a ball hawk safety with potentially a really good defense, if you're able to make some of the moves that I'm thinking they're probably making in the first 2 rounds. And then the last one I could potentially see is also the Eagles. Like the Eagles need help in the secondary, mainly because obviously they traded away CJGJ to the Texans, so the Texans could get right guard that Luke was absolutely happy to lose for Texas A&M. Goodness gracious, can't think of his name right now off the top of my head. Kenyon Green, goodness gracious. So Kenyon Green, they traded him away to get CJGJ. So now you're loss of a safety. Do I think that he really fits them? I think they're going to be looking for more of an actual run defender than Andrew Mukuba, which, like I said, that's going to cause him to fall. But if he's there in the third, then you just take off the potential. And if he doesn't work out, you're not hurting yourself because you're the Eagles. But if he works well in your system as far as being that ball hawk that you desperately need, I think that'd be perfectly fine for the Eagles. Because like I said, you're going to be good regardless because you draft well. So just putting that out there. If Angel Mukuba is there in the third round, and so you don't somehow take, I'll talk eventually about Malaki Starks, then that could potentially be good for you because you do need help at the safety. The last one for tier 3 is going to be Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State. I like him a lot more than like Jaylen Reed. Goodness gracious, can't think of the name. As far as him being a more athletic, I think he's better as far as being actual play the ball in the air. I think he has really good instincts. I think he's a better tackler as well. Is he as athletically gifted as another player that I'm talking about? No. Does he have better ball skills than another player that I'm talking about? No. Is he better overall player than another person I'm talking about? No. But as far as being a really, really good player, not a star, not even down to solid, but being a really good player, like I think Kevin Winston Jr. can be that. I think very highly of him. Obviously, he's coming with injury, so there's some current concerns there. And that's the reason why I think he's going to fall in the draft. Like I said, you see it all the time. Injury concerns, especially if it's not a clean bill of health, you're going to have a lot of people start to see like a little bit of a slide. And that's going to be beneficial for him because he has a lot more options of going to really good teams. So Kevin Winston, I could easily see him like potentially going to the Eagles. In this case, I would prefer him to go to the Eagles than Andrew Mukuba. But he would work out really well for them. I think like honestly, if he's there in the second round, like the end of the second round, I see Kevin Winston Jr. going there. I think there's a chance he goes higher in the second round because there's going to be somebody who really, really loves him. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. But if he gets to 64, Eagles would be crazy not to take him. The Dolphins are another thing too. Obviously, the Dolphins need a lot of help at safety because they lost back-to-back years their top 2 safeties, and one of them is going to be Javon Holland. So they desperately need help at safety. And Kevin Winston Jr. would be really good for them. Would he be nearly as good as Javon Holland? No, but he would be able to help establish some kind of defense for this Miami Dolphins team that hopefully doesn't get injured. It doesn't get injured all the time like they have the last couple of years. And then the last one too is also the Bengals. The Bengals need good safety play, mainly because if I'm looking into who they hired as defense coordinator, hired a Notre Dame guy, what has he had the last couple of years? Really good safety play. So I think there's a chance they obviously might go defensive line in the first round. But if they go line the defensive in the first round, in that second round, I think they're looking for a safety because they desperately need a good safety play because they haven't had that since uh, uh, went to the Falcons. Can't think of his name right now off the top of my head. I'm so bad at it right now. Jesse Bates. As soon as Jesse Bates left, and also the first time Von Bell left, like your safeties have not been good. The one that you drafted, not been good. So you get Kevin Winston Jr. in the second round. You already improve in the first round with whatever draft pick you take. I think that's perfectly fine with this defense who needs a lot of help. Like I said, Kevin Winston Jr. I think is going to be a really good option. Now moving on to tier 2. Now tier 2, 2 players. And my number 3 is going to be Nick Emmanwori. Now Nick Emmanwori, initially, I had as my second safety. But after watching a little bit more of the second safety, I put him up above because I think Nick Emmanwori is a really, really good, potentially be a star, strong safety. Athletically, off the charts. Like legitimately, I think he had like a 10 out of 10 RAS score, which is like not everything, but it's something that people point to. I think obviously look at some of his highlights. You know, if you're that kind of guy who's just watching the highlights, you know he's able to pick the ball off, he's able to turn it, like, oh, it's kind of stuff that's so cool. Da, da, da. But there are times when he either gets too aggressive, and that shows, like I said, he's a very big body, but sometimes he gets a little too aggressive and he misses a tackle. Or 2, he doesn't really know what he's doing in coverage, and it just so happens that he breaks on an easily telegraphed ball. Because if you watch some of those games where he's picking the ball off, the cornerback is staring at the wide receiver, and he just happens to be in the right time, right place. I don't want to knock him too much because I think athletically speaking, if he's able to go to a really good team that already has an established safety there to help him out along the way, I think he can be an amazing box safety. Do I think he's a free safety? No, I've seen some of that too. But I think as far as being a really good box safety who could potentially play the run well, you're able to kind of calm him down and get him into a really good stance because he has the body to be able to tackle anybody. And you're able to like really train his eyes to be able to like, help him read quarterback's eyes and not just going to be staring down a wide receiver. Then I think that Emmanwori can be one of the better players in this draft. But right now, I think that some of the stuff that's coming out in the combines kind of like, okay, now we kind of come back to reality. And is he going to be a first round pick? Maybe. But is he going to be a top 15 pick? No. And he shouldn't be. But I think that Emmanwori is a good player. And I think that he has some fits. Like I said, I would like him to go to the Seahawks because I've seen a lot of stuff where the Seahawks have been falling in love with him. Obviously, a lot of us want them to go offensive line in the first round, but John Schneider never does what anybody wants. But Nick Emmanwori in the Seahawks, with as good as the defense is right now, that would be amazing for them because one, he's athletic, he's super duper athletically gifted. They already have really good players in the secondary that kind of help, help him out right now because you have Julian Love, you have obviously have Witherspoon. Like I said, you have really good players. You need a nose tackle, but outside of him, I think at most positions you're either amazing at or you're pretty good at. But getting Emmanwori would work out really well for the Seahawks. And like I said, I feel pretty confident they can kind of rope in some of that aggression that can kind of lead to, like I said, some missed tackles. Not as bad as Andrew Mukuba, but still missed tackles nonetheless. The next one is going to be the Falcons. The Falcons have also been looking into him too, which is fine. Like I said, I wouldn't like it, but I can understand why the Falcons would want to get him. One is because obviously athletically gifted, you can mold them, but their strong safety right now is Jordan Fuller. And I've talked about it before. I was so hopeful of Jordan Fuller coming to the Panthers last year, and both him and Xavier Woods were absolutely garbage. Now, him going back to Raheem Morris, maybe that might help him out a little bit because he's going back to a scheme that he knew. But he knew the Evero scheme too. So I don't feel super confident with him being a strong safety. So if they take Emmanwori, then I think that'd be a huge upgrade. And he's paired with an amazing free safety in Jesse Bates that can help him along the way. So in that case, I would like for him personally to go to the Falcons because he can be able to improve the defense. I know that I've seen some Falcons fans that don't really want Emmanwori, but that's fine. Like I said, in the case of potentially in the second round, I would feel as a Falcons fan you'd be better suited for that. Not 15, but like in the second round, sure. And then the last I could possibly see him going to is the Bills. Like I said, the Bills are, I think they need one more safety. I think they're fine if they just stay as is. Like I said, not stay as is, if they get just one more because you got Cole Bishop, you obviously got Taylor Rapp, and you brought back DeMar Hamlin. But I think you need another guy and someone who's going to eventually, because I can't remember if DeMar Hamlin was just a 1 year or if it was a 2 year deal, but I think he might just be like a placeholder until they eventually get their other starter because they love Taylor Rapp. So in this case, get Emmanwori, who is an absolutely athletically gifted guy who in the Bills system I think could work out really well for him because it's just a really good defense. So, and then moving on to the last one in tier 2 is going to be Xavier Watts. Xavier Watts was a guy who initially I liked because I saw some of him from before watching Notre Dame games. But the more and more I watched him, I was like, man, this guy's good. Legitimately, I could see him possibly going into the first round. I don't think it'll happen, but he's athletically gifted enough. He's got really, really great ball skills. Like I said, I think he's an amazing ball hawking free safety. And I think that teams are going to fall in love with him. Legitimately, I don't see him passing 50 at anything. I legitimately could see him going in either the first round or that 37 to 40 something pick. And when I say 37, I'm referring to the Raiders because that's a perfect fit for the Raiders. If the Raiders, for some reason, don't want to go corner in the first 2 rounds and they end up taking, let's just say they take Ashton Jeanty or they take somebody else at the pick 1, if Xavier Watts falls to them at 37, I would be fine with them taking them instead of taking a corner because, one, you get to replace Trayvon Merring with Xavier Watts, which is pretty stinking good. And I think Xavier Watts can be the kind of guy that's going to be able to help lead this defense into the next chapter of their 3-year deal with Pete Carroll. The CS Biotech can work out. And if I am the Raiders, and I'm somehow taking a cornerback in round 1 and Xavier Watson in round 2, and then in a really good running back class taken in round 3. That would be an amazing first draft for your new GM, your new head coach, obviously old head coach, but a new head coach, Pete Carroll. Legitimately, you would fix your defense and you can still get a really good running back because there's legitimately so many good running backs in this draft class that can be a starter. It doesn't have to just be Ashton Jeanty, who is an amazing running back as is. But I think Xavier Watts for the Raiders would be a really, really great fit. I just wanted to preface that. And then I would love for him to go to the Panthers. It's not going to happen. We're way too low in the second round to get him. But, man, I just pairing him with Trayvon Merring would do so well for our defense because we desperately need a free safety to begin with. But, man, he is so good. Legitimately, I think that Xavier Watts is going to be a star in this league. And, honestly, the perfect fit that I see him going to is the Bears. Even though it's a little bit further down, the Bears can trade back up with the pick they got from us. Xavier Watts to the Bears. The Bears have been wanting to have really good safety play. If they can somehow get a really good player in the first round and then pair that up with Xavier Watts and then get another impact player in the second and their second round pick, legitimately, I don't see how you could possibly say that the Bears aren't the offseason champs. Legitimately, not what the last couple of years have been, but legitimately be the offseason champions because you nailed the draft. You have an amazing free agency. Legitimately, I don't see how you could do anything different. And if I'm the Bears and he starts to fall, I trade up to get Xavier Watts. He is going to be a star in the NFL, and I feel very, very confident in that. Now, moving on to Tier 1, and this is a guy who the last 3 years has been amazing. However, you could say that he's not been as good as he was freshman or sophomore year, but he's still an amazing player who's very diverse, and that's Malaki Starks from Georgia. Malaki Starks is still amazing. I understand that a lot of people were starting to sour on him, and I'm not as high as I was, but would I be upset if he's somehow taken within the top 13? No, because he's so good at being a versatile weapon, at being a really good ball hawk, as far as being a very sure tackler. Is he the most athletically gifted guy? Is he Nick Emmanwori? No. But as far as being a really good ball player, yes. Malaki Starks is that guy. And honestly, I would be super duper happy if somehow, some way, the Panthers are like, you know what? Jalon Walker, nah, we'll take another Georgia guy and we'll get Malaki Starks. Honestly, I'll preface this by saying I'm fine with taking Jalon Walker. I think we probably will. But I prefer us to take either Malaki Starks or Donovan Azareye'h. I will go crazy if we take either Malaki Starks, who would be an amazing free safety for us, pair with Javon Mooring, which would be fixing a lot of our problems, or to take the upside down of Azareye'h, who is an amazing pass rusher that we desperately need because right now, I'm going off a little bit tangent, but still, right now, both of our edge rushers, our starting edge rushers, are on their last year of the deal, and all we have back there is Patrick Jones, who's on a 2-year deal, and then DJ Johnson. I don't feel confident with that. I'm fine with where we are right now, but I prefer if we have an actual edge rusher. And Donovan Azareye'h is my draft crush. Him and Jaden Higgins, but I know we're not going to go with Jaden Higgins. But man, I love both of them, and I absolutely adore Malaki Starks. So if somehow, some way, we end up getting him, I would love that for us. The other potential players that Malaki Starks could go to, and I didn't technically put him in the fits. I kind of went off on a little bit tangent. Sorry about that. The Falcons, like I said, he's more of a free safety, but if the shoe fits, him pairing with Jesse Bates would absolutely hurt my soul. I would just say that it would absolutely hurt my soul. But it would be amazing for the Falcons if that happens. I don't think it would happen, but in the case of pairing a really amazing player with an already established player, why wouldn't you? But more than likely, the Falcons go a different direction. The Colts, I would love that for the Colts. I know everyone's been pinning them to Tyler Warren. Maybe Tyler Warren doesn't even make it to them, which would be beneficial for them because they can take a tight end later on in the draft because I think there's some good options later on. And then you take a really good player, Malaki Starks, that fits a very big position of need because your safety room is absolutely abhorrent. Your safety room, your linebacker room, your defensive lineman is not as good as you were hoping for because your interior is still solid, but it's old, and your edge rushers have not been performing well. Sorry, Colts, but it's not looking the best. And then the last one is the Dolphins, and that's basically kind of what we talked about before. Both the Dolphins safeties from the past 2 seasons, they've been leaving. One went to the Broncos, one went obviously to the Giants. And if I'm the Dolphins and Malaki Starks falls to me at 13, and especially if there's like another player that they desperately wanted that's not there, I would be perfectly fine with taking Malaki Starks because at the same time, that's a desperate need for us. You might want to take corner. Maybe the cornerback's not there. If Malaki Starks is there, take him. He's going to be a really good player. He has potential to be a superstar. I for sure think he's going to be a star, but he has the potential to be a superstar as well. Love me Malaki Starks. And with that, I have ranked I haven't quite done top 100, but ranked all the positions that I have for this upcoming draft. Like I said, I got them all done before the draft. I didn't have that much time to spare, but I still got all of them done before the draft. So thank you so much for watching this video. This was a longer one, not as long, obviously, as the defensive lineman draft class. That was rough. But if you have anything, if you're wondering what I feel about certain players that I wasn't able to talk about, I would love to talk. I would love to hear either what you think about the draft prospect, or you might ask me what I think about it. Just a reminder that I will be streaming with Luke the first round of the draft tomorrow, which technically probably be today because I don't know when I'm going to be releasing this, but let's just say today because more like I'm going to be releasing this in the morning on Thursday. But we will be streaming the draft on Thursday and also on Friday. Picks round 2 and 3. and we'll be doing it on more than likely my channel. So just be prepared for that as well. If not, round 2 and 3 will be on the Gridiron Gurus channel. So we'll link that after the first round. So thank you so much for watching. As always, you're always welcome here. Anybody's welcome. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.